a fast-paced, glittering account of how a bombastic brass hat gets his comeuppance. In this episode of Roll Off a Tangent, my teammates, Anthony Simeone, Nikita Zueff, and XJ, and myself, Robert Gibson alias Zendexor, are going to discuss Alfred Bester's Disappearing Act, a short story which first appeared in 1953. The year is 2112, and America is fighting a hugely destructive world war against an unspecified enemy. General Carpenter, who is in control of the USA's military effort, calls the conflict the War of the American Dream. This turns out to be a supremely ironic title, not just in the obvious sense that the dream is a nightmare of havoc and suffering, but also in a literal sense which utterly astonishes and baffles General Carpenter. What happens is that under the intolerable stresses of war, some of the combatants react by discovering within themselves paranormal powers of escape into realities of their own creation, making their private dreams come literally true. In under 20 pages, the author takes the reader through the succession of discoveries whereby arrogant General Carpenter, misunderstanding events at every stage, is forced increasingly to realize that he is totally out of his depth. He is accustomed to give orders, summoning every kind of expert to deal with whatever problem confronts the war effort, and always he's given what he wants. But when at last he is told that to understand the new powers of the imagination now being wielded will require the insight of a poet, and I quote, Carpenter snapped up his intercom. "Send me a poet," he said. He waited and waited and waited. And now there's nothing for it but for me to say, get me 3 expert podcasters.
Good luck with that.
Cool intro.
Yeah, anyone here in the room could
No.
help with this out?
Well, I'll be a
Amazing.
sharpened tool. You need you need sharpened tools, as they kept repeating. Hopefully we're pretty sharp and not too dull. Sharpened tools for podcasting and literary analysis. As the resident American in the group, I have to say that I take great offense to the mockery of the American dream. No, no, nothing has changed between now and 2112. Nothing has changed between now and maybe it's gotten worse between now and 2112. The American dream, if it ever existed, was always a sham, but it's even more so in Alfred Bester's story here that we read, Disappearing Act. Yeah, it was. I thoroughly enjoyed this story. I liked the repetition of phrases like send me an expert. There was send me this, send me that, send me an engineer, send me an architect or whatever. He's always the general, the pompous general is always sending for all these experts, these so-called experts. And in America today, he was a prophet, Bester, because we love our experts today, and everyone's an expert now on the web, on the internet. So calling yourself an expert and calling for experts is uniquely American, I think, in a lot of ways, ironically so. But yeah, I mean, I thought the repetition was great as a lover of poetry and a occasional writer of poetry, for better or worse. I like sort of that. It was almost sort of a prose poetry to me. He repeated that phrase of, referring to the experts as sharpened tools and the allusion to using them as weapons. You're using these experts not, to support the ongoing war effort of America and supporting the American dream and giving lip service to, we're preserving the American dream. And the American dream is all about the arts. But in the America in this future, they've preserved no true art. So what's left for people but to develop these untapped psychic powers of, as Robert presaged in his intro, this people have, out of the need for escape in a world with no poetry and no arts, despite the protestations of the general, people develop this ability to escape and literally vanish and escape into worlds of their own imagining. So I think Bester went a little heavy-handed in sort of the exposition phase of things when he had one of the experts, I think it was a psychologist, trying to explain to the clueless general, what these people were actually doing once they kind of figured it out. I think he got a little exposition-y on the heavy side, but other than that, I mean, I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I can attest to the falsehood in many ways of the American dream, or the malleability of the American dream, and that really made me reflect on that and my own culture in terms of what that really means. And then the irony of, in the end, when you have given lip service at the end of the story to the American dream, including all of these soft things like art and poetry and such, that one could not be found to explain what was happening or to carry things forward. So yeah, in all, thank you for introducing us to the story, Robert. I had not delved too much into Bester's work over the years. I think I'd read The Stars My Destination, and one other short novel by him years ago. The Demolished Man, I think I read ages ago. But otherwise, I hadn't delved too much into Bester's work. So I appreciate it. Thank you for bringing this to our attention.
So,
Cool.
And,
Nikki, are you actually with us, or
Yeah,
have you
yeah.
have you frozen out? Just
No,
asking.
no. I'm just sitting still like the good tool I am. Yeah. So this is an interesting story. There's a lot of things that it uses that I usually don't like in a story. Summarization of information, introduction of characters who are very important and vital to the story. Like 3/4 in. But this author, and I will paraphrase what Robert usually says, has put the veil over my eyes and has done the impossible, made me forget all of the things that I don't like in fiction, using the tools that one does, and completely enveloped me in the story itself. I was fascinated, it was interesting, and as I was reading it, when we got to the points of time to which all of these people went to, the nerd in me was like, okay, something's up here, because this woman is smoking a cigarette in Rome, and this guy is meeting Henry Ford. Like, something doesn't quite match here. Like, at a glance, it all seems okay and kind of passes to where these people kind of should be, And then Ben-Hur came along, and I was like, okay, all right. So the author is not making a mistake; he's making a point. And from then on, I was like, okay, cool. So what is the point? And the point did not disappoint. And I like the historian. I forget his name in the story. I forget the name of that character. But regardless, him coming into the tale and explicitly showing us what the issue is here at hand. I felt like the story already made that point way before that he came in. So if there's one point of criticism, I kind of feel like maybe he was stating the obvious, but at the same time, I have been reading what now? More over 100 short stories with all of you, right? And even before then, I've read a lot of fiction. So it might be obvious to me as a person who reads a lot of these things and can pick up on what the author is trying to say, right? But it did feel kind of like, yeah, okay, like that insight I kind of already gathered. These people are all schmucks. They have no idea what they're talking about, right? Like their society um, has come to a point where there is no individuality, and this mockery of the American dream uh, that goes through the entirety of the tale. They kind of seemed like communists to me, honestly. For everyone, there is a job, and there is a man who needs to be on the job, right? Or again, I'm paraphrasing, but that's what the Communist Party says, right? Like everybody works, and therefore everybody eats, right? Um, So I found that interesting. I don't know what exactly the parallel there was or what the author was trying to say with that, if at all they were thinking about it. But I definitely felt like this was trying to somehow create parallels between these two dogmas, or even say that in the far future, democracy is communism or whatever. I'm not very sure. But the point itself of the story, which is obvious, um, is crucial, right? And I don't think that it will ever be out of fashion. I don't think that this is something that we will ever not need as a cautionary tale of what transpires when the people no longer dictate what is freedom. And from that perspective, I think the story succeeds on many ways. And the author succeeds in duping me in liking things that I usually don't. So, I mean, that has to account for something. Yeah, nice little story. Goes over quite quickly, even though there's a lot of content there. Yeah, overall, now I'm slurring my words. A great experience. Yeah. What about you? Actually, what did you think about it?
Yeah. So before I start, I just want to apologize to everyone. I might be sluggish today, just because I've had a bit of a arthritic flare up last night, and it wasn't a very comfortable night for me. But the overwhelming feeling I got when I was reading this short story is how much of a Doctor Strangelove vibe I got from it. And like Doctor Strangelove, it wasn't I mean, maybe there are some people out there who totally grasp the movie in one sitting, but that person is not me. And I had to watch it a couple of times before I realized what satire the movie was trying to get at. And I get the same sense of that here, very strong vibe. There are a lot of things that just kind of went over my head. Um, for instance, one of the things that didn't hit me at all throughout the story was just how Scream, who is the historian, uh, had put together this had figured out what the inmates were actually doing, which was all that focus on those American characters like Henry Ford and who the other two dudes. And I'm like, I don't know who the other two dudes are. I know who Henry Ford sort of is, but I don't know historically what their timeline is like. Like where do they appear and stuff like that. So that totally went over my head. I have no idea uh, what was going on until actually Scream spelled it out for me. I literally I drew it out. This is what is happening, you moron. and so that's it. I really enjoyed the story itself because just like Doctor Strangelove, it was it was it's got a I mean, it feels like satire to me. I don't know if it actually is this disappearing act. And I always appreciate some like how over the top satires can be. And I feel like it mirrors so many things even today. Uh, I am not an American, so I'm going to jump in and risk some blowback. But it seems to me that America has not stopped being at war for quite a while now, and it seems like to me it seems like the stories say they will continue to be at war until 20 whatever that time is in the future. And
2112.
yeah, and the way Carpenter, General Carpenter, comports himself like the kind of philosophy that he has for life and all that, and how he thinks America should be structured and all that, kind of feels to me like he's so middle management, if I could put it that way. Or is it even middle management? It's like a guy who starts a small business and then just kind of expects like the CEO of a small business, and then just kind of expects everyone to be tools to help him achieve to do his bidding so that he can achieve his goal of making $1 million.
I feel it's more like one of those individuals who works in a company, and I'm sure we've all met these kind of people who does nothing themselves and just delegates, and that somehow
Yeah.
in a universe they got to a position of great power, and you've no idea why, because they have no skills
Yeah,
besides telling
exactly,
everybody what to
exactly.
do.
Nail on the head right there. Yeah, that would like Carpenter really feels like that kind of guy to me, you know. And I was like, man, this is like I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, Bester probably have very intimate knowledge of an individual like that, you know, or maybe he himself is one. And
Oh
so,
well, you
I
know,
mean, the man
powerful
can
people.
clearly write, so
Yeah, people
on
in
that
power
point, maybe.
abuse it. You know, abusing power, whether it's a CEO, a puffed up general, or an oligarch, or the head of a CEO of a company. You know, all of them are theoretically, if you listen to some of the theories, to get that high in a position in a company or in a military structure or what have you, you have to be a little psychopathic and lack empathy and such. So, you know, and you know, certain oligarchs in the world that we may know, names unmentioned, do seem a little bit psychopathic in a way. They have a lack of empathy, and they have, you know, what does it take to claw your way all the way up to the top of a hierarchy like that, if not cold rationale, calculating, and using people as pawns and tools? You know,
I think
it's telling that he
it
calls people tools, you know, sharpened tools.
while there might be some truth to that, I think it is dangerous to completely dehumanize evil, because the idea of it being a lot closer to us, normal human
Sure.
beings, um, is what's actually truly terrifying about
Psychopaths are
people
very
doing
human. Yeah, psychopaths are. They definitely are. They are human, and it's the
right, right.
banality of
But
evil. But you know,
I think
yeah.
when people hear like a buzzword like that, right? Like you and I might not, but you know, you're just distant themselves. They're like they're more alien than real people. You know, like real
Mm.
human beings. If you just got a real person in there, you know, like they do a good job, right, or whatever. Um,
Yeah,
but
the
it's
banality of evil is definitely something where, yeah, anyone can turn to evil deeds, right? So it's the banality of it is what's terrifying. You're right. You're right. Good point.
you know, like I get a sense that Carpenter's shall if I can put it into D&D terms, he probably put a lot of proficiency points into talking big, and then just kind of dumpstat everything else.
yeah, he's got a charisma of 20 for sure. It's off the charts.
It's like it's a
But
hyper.
a
Normally
wiz
You know, the funny thing
a
is he
wisdom of
himself.
between
three.
3 and 8.
He
Oh, everyone's talking. Go, AJ, go on.
no, he himself
Yeah.
is he himself has turned himself into a tool. You know what I mean? That's the direction that I'm driving at when I was like saying he dumpstatted everything else except talking big as a proficiency. It was
I mean,
like
he's definitely a tool. I agree.
yeah. Yeah, tool, yes. In more ways than one.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Anthony?
No, yeah, I totally agree. He is a tool in the modern sense of the word. But yeah, he had he only has a 3 wisdom in D&D terms. So
Yeah,
he
yeah,
has
yeah.
no wisdom, and he dumped everything in the charisma, right?
For those who
So
don't know, the normal point distribution is 3 to 18, right? Because that's
yeah,
the minimum and the
that's
maximum you can get on 3
for your statistics, yeah.
dice of success. All right.
Yeah.
So we haven't heard from Robert.
Robert.
I
Robert
mean, he
is
clearly
the
hates the story, you know.
last but not least.
Yeah.
one of the most remarkable things about the story, I think, is its sheer shortness. It's just 20 pages, if that, and it reminds me of well, it it makes me think that General Carpenter, what's not said about him is quite remarkable as well. Bester doesn't go into his actual constitutional position, if any. He's just presented as this military leader, and for some reason, he's got the whole country under his thumb. Uh, that's a sign of good writing. I think you just write what you have to write, and no more. You don't pad it out if you're writing a kind of crisp story like that. And it's a sort of, in a way, it's like a poem. As Anthony said right at the beginning of our discussion, the repetition of phrases is quite remarkable. Bester's known for that. At least I can think of another story of his, Fondly Fahrenheit, which has the same kind of incantatory repetition in it.
Mm.
And well, that's basically, I was surprised when I reread the story for this how short it was, because it makes a big impression for its size. Um, I don't I don't know that it's really a satire on the actual American dream, because I think that's a valid enough concept in the sense, not in the sense of rags to riches stories so much, but just in the sense of ordinary people being allowed to live ordinary lives without interference from, um, the squire or the oppressive ecclesiastics or anything that people crossed the Atlantic to get away from originally. So that's a valid enough concept. Of course, it was never unchallenged, unfortunately, but it's there, and or it was there, and I think it's admirable, and also the idea that it was to do with the arts. Well, America was remarkable for the arts. Science fiction itself is a shining example of this, and stories like the present one we're discussing, written in the 50s, was part of a remarkable explosion of talent, if you like, in that time, mid century. So I think the satirical element in the story is to do with this asking for experts for this, that, and the other, and in the end, the limitations of that policy are rather hilariously shown up.
Yeah, there are like a lot of things that just kind of flew over my head, and I actually would like to know what you guys, what your interpretation of the last bit is. Like, let me read from my screen here. Carpenter was snapped up his intercom. Send me a poet, he said. He waited and waited and waited, while America sorted feverishly through his 290 millions of hardened and sharpened experts, its specialized tools to defend the American dream of beauty and poetry and the better things in life. He waited for them to find a poet, not understanding the endless delay, the fruitless search, not understanding why Bradley screamed, laughed and laughed and laughed at this final fatal disappearance. So I'm a little bit like curious. In the first place,
Like, what does this mean? You mean?
yeah, like well, in the first place, like
Well,
who?
in a world where everyone has a purpose, and all of those purposes are something that are useful to society, right? I did air quotes for those of you who are just doing audio. There is no room for art. There is no room for the poet. There is no room for expression of self. There's only a goal. You've I don't know if you've played, but I'm sure you've heard about the game Helldivers 2.
I've heard of it. Never played it. Yeah.
If you see any of those trailers, it's basically a parody of Starship Troopers,
A
right?
parody
Think of
of.
that
Oh, interesting. Is that a parody of the movie or
of
a parody of the
a parody
book?
of the movie, not parody of the book, because
That's
so it's like
interesting.
a double parody. So it flips it around and takes the idea seriously again, while also making it horrific.
Right. It's a
So it's
parody
a
of a
parody of a
satire.
parody that reverses the parody by making it into a parody. Anyway, so the whole,
Oh, this
like if you look at any
Inception,
of
man.
yeah, if you look at any of the trailers, I mean, this is what happens in human history, like I'm sure Shakespeare took ideas, if he was real, took ideas from some previous authors that he remembered hearing from as a child and was like, oh, that's awesome. But now we all think that Shakespeare came up with it. So they, in every trailer or everything you look at it, all any of their updates, they're all like, yeah, we are fighting for super Earth, we have to defend humanity and blah 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 blah. So in a world like that, in a world of Starship Troopers, you're fighting bugs. There's no time to write a little poem about the bugs being angry or whatever. You have to, you're fighting for survival. And that's um, the crisis mode that America of this short story has been put into permanently. So there is no moment of reflection. There's no need for it, because
Mhm.
there's a goal and everyone is focused on that goal. So
Mm.
art
Yeah.
has died in this world. That's what
Yeah.
basically the
Yeah,
author said.
that's been pretty clear throughout the story. You're right.
Yeah.
I'm just like, actually, what does the last line mean? Not understanding why Bradley screamed, laughed and laughed and laughed at this final fatal disappearance.
Yeah,
What
because
disappearance is
Carpenter
he
doesn't. Yeah, the
talking about?
general doesn't understand that he killed art. The
Mm.
general's like shouting, like we're doing this for the poets, and he's like, okay, go find a poet. And he's like, get me a poet. There isn't any because he killed them all. They're all dead. They're all gone. They're either in the
Yeah.
gulag starved, or they're no longer born or created because there is nothing of substance anymore.
And
Only war.
the general himself, if you think about it, he's disappeared. Maybe not in the way that the test subjects are disappearing. He's disappeared into his own delusion, into his own fantasy of how he sees the world, the conception of it. And I think the person was laughing at him because he just knew he knew that this guy had disappeared into this delusion. As Nikki was saying, like, the everyone has become so specialized, a tool for everything. A tool is not capable of creating something beautiful. And I love the movie. It reminded me of Dead Poet Society too. Have you ever seen the movie Dead Poet Society? I love Dead Poet Society, where he explains to the kids, things like law, engineering, science, these are vital to sustain life. But poetry, arts, music, love, this is what we live for. And that, in the world of this story, everyone is just something of a hard science or a hard discipline or even a soft discipline, but like psychology. But no one has room or time to be an artist. And maybe in the time period, if the story was written in the 50s, correct? So, in America, what we were at the height of sort of the Red Scare. So, and so I don't know Bester's affiliations or beliefs about communism or whatever, but maybe if he was anti-communist, maybe he was critiquing communism because the stereotype in America was everyone is just this tool of the communist state, and there's no room for frivolity or the arts. But in America, we have our own problems with supporting the arts because the first things that we do when austerity comes around, the first things my country does, especially under certain regimes, is they cut support for the arts, public broadcasting, for libraries, everything artistic and everything that gives meaning to human life. We start defunding it all from a governmental level. So it's an interesting study there on what does the American what is sacrificed on the altar of American exceptionalism and our jingoistic warlike nature that we go out and we feel like we need to police the world. So yeah, all of that kind of like bubbled up when I was reading it, just from an American perspective. So, but yeah,
I think great art speaks to every individual in a different way, and so
yeah,
I
sure,
think we all have different interpretations of the story, and I think that's what makes it great, right? Like, um,
sure,
if you read some sort of a, I don't know, pulp detective story that isn't trying to be high art, I think all of us will come up with the same conclusion, right? Like the butler did it, blah 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 blah. But this is trying to do something. This is trying to do something actually that you very much dislike, which is like the author being like, "This is my worldview. This is it. This is the correct way."
You
So
know,
I'm
that
fascinated
is
that
that
you
is
don't hate
very
it.
interesting to me because it doesn't come out to me at all like that. It wasn't so maybe it's just because this is so short. It does not give me the same vibe that Starship Troopers did. You know, like it
Mm-hmm.
was very in your face, kind of like saying this is the right way to go and all that stuff. Um, it is it is I think I will go back to Doctor Strangelove. It just like gave me that really strong vibe. It's like a guy who the and I might be completely wrong when I say all this. It feels a lot to me like somebody who is doing a piss take, you know, which to me was what Doctor Strangelove was like. It's like somebody saying, yeah, you know, guys, the way you are going on right now, this is probably where you end up, and I'm gonna write a short story about that just to take the piss out of you all, you know, that kind of feeling. That was what came out to me, and I might be completely wrong about all this. To be fair, because like I don't know
yeah.
the last thing about Bester, you know.
I think it's an apt comparison. I mean, and I had not thought of that, but I think a comparison to the satire that is Doctor Strangelove. I mean, you know, how I learned to love the bomb, stop fearing it and love it, right? You know, whatever that additional catchphrase was exactly, I can't remember, but yeah, it's
How I learned to
how I
stop
learned to
worrying.
stop worrying and love the bomb, right? You know, like it's, you know, these people in this future like are all geared towards war and towards this American dominance and, you know, to the detriment of the arts and poetry.
I think we found the breaking in the code. I think this is what this is. I think if XJ feels like this is a humorous or satirical tale in some way, then he doesn't hate the fact that it's pushing a message on him, because it's like making fun of itself. So then it's okay,
So I'm
maybe.
curious what you think the message is, because to
What the
me,
message is?
well, first of all, I have to say this:
Yeah.
if there is a message, it completely flew over my head.
Okay.
Like I have to stress that, like a lot of the story went over my head because like
Uh,
the for instance, like I'll go back to that bit about how Scream put together what's actually happening with Henry Ford and Las Casa. I don't even know who Las Casa is, to be quite honest. So it's like when he name drop all that to me, they're like, okay, so they're all existing in the same place. I don't know these people from uh Budget
That's why he
Totem
gave
Pose.
3 examples.
Yeah.
That's why he gave 3 examples of
Mhm.
invented pasts, because he probably knew that some of his readers wouldn't get one of them.
That's true, and I did get the sense that something is kind of off when Cleopatra was smoking, you know, a cigarette,
Yeah, cigarette.
you know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But at the same time, the I have to say like the main, I would say like a bigger amount of attention was put onto the Henry Ford and Las Casas, the American side. Uh,
Yeah.
Right. So naturally I followed that, and all of that references just kind of went over my head. So whatever point there was, I'm afraid Bester has engaged with a bit of a thick hit
Well, I mean,
with
yeah,
me.
now that you've said that, you know, that was one of my complaints, as I said in my when I first started talking about the story. But I mean, that actually kind of future proofs Bester's story for itself, because yeah, maybe as time goes on, I didn't really remember who, I think it was a baseball player, right? It was the Scarza, right? So, but in explaining the anachronisms to the general, that one character future proofs the story, because at least you can get like, oh, okay, this guy in the story is telling me that these people are out of time. Like, it was too late in time in the time stream for Ford to have existed as a young man just starting up his automobile company, right? Based on where that one time traveler was going. So, and Scarza wasn't playing for the particular team, I think it was, if I'm remembering the story right. So he's like, oh yeah, that one baseball player, Scarza, wasn't playing at that time. And so he kind of explains the anachronism. But yeah, if now that we're so far away from the 1950s, if people don't remember who some of these personalities are, or at least when they appeared in time, so at least he's kind of future proofing the story that way. So interesting that you've saying that kind of went over your head, but that kind of cures for me the problem. One of the only few problems I have with the story is like, okay, we get it. There's anachronisms. Like he kind of was like really delving into each one of the anachronisms for each, and I'm like,
Yeah,
okay,
I'm gonna
we
be
get it. But otherwise,
really honest, because the only anachronism I got was completely Layla. What's her name? Layla Machan, whatever her name is.
Mhm.
That was the only thing that caught me. It was like, first of all was a cigarette, and then I'm like, why is Ben Hur in
Right.
Rome?
Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah. So
I
you
was
didn't
like,
mind
what?
driving a car, for example. Yeah.
Sorry.
You didn't mind Disraeli driving a car, and that was it.
So first of all,
Right.
I am not familiar with who Disraeli is. You might
Oh,
call me very uneducated or anything like that, but it just didn't occur to me who he is off the bat. So literally the only part that caught my alarm bell, so to speak, was Ben Hur and the cigarette.
Cleopatra. Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, so
that's
I guess I don't really dislike the point because I completely missed the point.
Mm.
well, I don't know anything about baseball, but I didn't need to. I just flowed through that part of the
Yeah.
story. I didn't. It doesn't bother me that I didn't understand all the references.
Mhm. Yeah. The
You,
point was the anachronism. Yeah.
the author's tone guides one across these what would be pitfalls in a more boring writer, but Bester
Mm.
sparkles through it.
Yeah. Indeed, I would agree. Well, what else didn't you understand, XJ? Or what else was there any other key points that sort of like were like, what's going on here?
Well,
Yeah.
I guess the thing that really got me wondering is I guess I'm really curious. This might not be answered in the story, to be quite honest. Like might have to we might have to dig a little bit into Bester and himself, and then like the situation surrounding the story. But I am wondering why he even wrote the story in the first place. Like I found it entertaining, and if that's a great idea, go for it, right? You don't really need more reason than to say that it's going to be fun to write the story, and then go write it. Yeah, I'm just like wondering what his message is.
Yeah. I'll try and attempt to answer
Oh
that.
yeah, go
So,
for it.
um, throughout the story, I'll do it with one point that happens in the story that I think reveals everything, because it's also the point that leads to the ending. Throughout the whole thing, we are told that Carpenter has shifted and changed the way America is to be the machine of war. And it keeps telling us, and he found this expert, and he found this expert, and he's asking for this expert now, and he is pushing the button on the intercom, and he wants to speak with somebody of this aspect and this aspect. Once he starts getting to things that are closer and closer to that which makes us human and that which makes us question things and interpret things differently, a historian, he barely finds one. and it's a guy who's serving time in prison, right? So history is one step away from art in this situation, right? This is a person who understands the way the world works, that it's cyclical, that there are events that transpired before and after. And in a world that Carpenter has created, we don't need these people because they're gonna make other people question my orders, right? And that's exactly what the guy even did, right? In the story, he was like, I disagree with what you're doing with the American dream. Okay, straight to jail, right? So what the author is saying is that if we allow, us ourselves to be completely and utterly bogged down by the realities of today, and if we allow ourselves to forget about the past, forget about what makes us human, art, for example, then we are going to be living in a society of drones that don't know what they're doing, why they're doing it, but they know it's the right thing to do. And as soon as you're in that situation, right, where people don't know what they're doing, don't know why they're doing it, but they know it's right, you can make people do anything,
Mm.
right? Because there's no
Yeah.
questioning mechanism. There's just like, all right, this is the order, and I know we're doing this for the American dream, for the poets, right? As Carpenter kept saying. So we got to do it. It makes sense, right? No matter how disastrous whatever you've been ordered to do is, or how preposterous. So that's kind of the message of the story, right? Like you can't just become a drone. It's 1984. What was that book called?
1984.
Yeah,
George Orwell,
yeah,
right? That's the
yeah,
one
yeah,
you're
yeah,
referring
Yeah.
to.
yeah. But basically, this is that in 18 pages.
Well, yeah, I mean, and to build off of that, I think, if this is written in the context it was written, so it's post World War II. So if anything, maybe this is a critique on fascism. And science fiction is, when it's at its best, it's really about the present. It's not really about the future. So it's taking the conditions of your present and extending them into the future and what would happen if these conditions continued. So if you take the general as an analog to a fascist, or to say Hitler from World War II, you take a fascist and you extend him into the future. So in 2112, we have this fascist who has, taken over control of the government, and is military minded, and he's just extending his domain and dominance over the world. And it doesn't matter what country he's in, a fascist is a fascist, right? So they always operate in the way that this general's operating in this story, and he's going out and he's eliminating all of the things that make human life worth it, the arts and love and individuality and things like that, and just focusing solely on the expediency of the sciences and things that are only of practical use to physical survival versus our mental well-being. So yeah, I think that's really to me, that's the point of the story, is that you have this one person as a fascist dictator, basically taking over redefining what the American dream is and stripping it of all of its humanity. And at the end, the irony is that the very thing he needs to understand and to use this, he wants to use this ability. Think about it. We can time travel a whole army back in time. He's missing the whole point of this ability. It's an individual escape from war. He can't use this time travel ability to teleport an army into the past and complete to win a battle before it even starts. And the person in the story says, forget about the fact of how could you even fight a battle when it's not happening? Before you can't fight a battle, it's not happening. So it's the absurdity of it, taking it to the absurd extreme of, like, this guy doesn't understand this ability that would never apply to war, and it's an escape from war, and it is the antithesis of war. This ability to be so creative that you can teleport yourself into the past and mix and match time streams and go into a past of your own imagining, without, you've eliminated the ability to understand it by your fascist ways, general. So that's why the guy was laughing at the end. The general was so clueless. That to me is, what I think the point of the story was.
What about you, Robert? What's your take on the point of the story?
Well, yeah, I don't disagree at all with what Anthony was saying. It's fascisto communism or communo-fascism, whatever you want to call it. But the remarkable thing about the story is that it's entertaining to read. That reminds one of Dr. Strangelove. You would think it impossible unless you'd seen that film that one could make a film, a comedy, because it is really a comedy, albeit a black comedy, about nuclear Armageddon. Um, well, Armageddon's not quite the right word because it's not a war; it's a doomsday machine. But anyway, you wouldn't think it's possible to write a comedy about that, but it was. Similarly, you wouldn't believe that one could write an entertaining satire on over specialization, which is what Disappearing Act really is. And yet here we have it. So it just goes to show that a good enough writer or a good enough film director can do just about anything.
Yeah, and make it not heavy-handed, or ham-fisted. It definitely is that. It's a light touch and a delicate balancing act, and he's definitely does it. It's a deft telling and satire.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely.
And in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me it's a great story just because of how open ended it is. For me anyway. There are some advantages to being a moron sometimes. Okay.
No,
Well,
stop it.
I think I really like all your takes. Do we have anything else we want to talk about the story? Like anything that strikes you guys?
No.
Yeah, any other points that anyone had wanted to bring about?
I think I think the historian understood that these people were just like going into some sort of hyper reality dreamland, and he clearly lies to the president or whatever, or the general, sorry, Carpenter, by saying to him, "Oh no, they're really going to the past," because clearly they're not. I don't know what they're trying to do there
I
at
think
the
they
end, but I'm pretty
clearly
sure that.
I think they clearly did go somewhere because they did physically disappear from the war
Yeah,
after
but
all.
that's why I said dream realm or
Yeah,
something,
but
because they're not
like you
changing
brought up a really good point. Like that whole part felt to me like a really souped up version of like going on a mushroom trip.
like to me it's clearly like all this is these people have been injured so much by war is that they are trying to live in their own realities where they don't have to face it again tomorrow, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the power, so to say. That's why you can't use it for um any military applications, because whatever they're doing in these realities wherever they're going is not affecting real history in any way. You know, Ben Hur did not suddenly appear out of nowhere from being a fictional character into Rome, because this
yeah,
Lena, or whatever her name was, um, introduced that concept into reality, because she didn't, right? She's just some other place that they go, right? So this power
yeah.
is useless in that way, and so basically these people are so like they're so in the cage of this society that thinking of stuff, being creative is a superpower, and nobody understands it. I think that's kind of like the end point to make of the story, right? So,
Yeah,
In a sense,
absolutely.
I really like how there's like a little bit of a bait and switch in the story, in the sense that in like a typical science fiction story, you get some investigation into some mysterious power, and they always have like this world shaking implications to what it really is. But then this story is like, you think about it, it is just a souped up fantasy trip. It's like,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean
I'm going
that's
to a
actually
fantasy land.
that's what makes, at least for me, George R. R. Martin so compelling as an author, because a lot of the stories and in his books, all of the things that seem fantasy-esque, they can be somewhat explained, or at least bogged down into some sort of a science. There are some sort of rules,
Mhm.
unlike in Harry Potter, for example, which I know wasn't created so that it could make sense at the end or something, right? It is for
Mhm.
young adults, but you could say the same thing about a fantasy series of novels, right, by George R. R. Martin. They don't have to make sense, but he takes the staking, painstaking brush to make it make sense, at least in his head, and then what gives it verisimilitude. And yeah, it's kind of the same here, where you could be like, oh, I mean, it's 100 years in the future, so maybe there's some sort of a technology that's helping this out. But really, these guys are dreaming. They're having cool
Mm.
dreams, and people are
Yeah.
confused by that, right?
Yeah, the story to me posits, can you drive human beings into such trauma and such PTSD from war? Maybe it's also an anti-war thing, come to think of it, can you drive people that the natural human ability that is very uniquely human that we think of, unless we prove dolphins are also as deep as we are and as conceptual and self-aware as we are. But to drive people and human beings to such trauma that our unique ability to conceptualize, to dream, to create realities, like in creating fiction, can you drive it to actual physical manifestation through trauma? So the metaphorical becomes literal, a literal transportation of the self, rather than just metaphorically through daydreaming or through reading or creation of art. Can human beings be pushed to where this becomes a literal power, an ability that affects the physical world? Yeah, it's again the other strength of science fiction, projecting the present into the future and asking what if, and taking something we take for granted as daydreaming and the metaphorical life that we have all inside of us, and projecting it and create. Say, what if it was real? What if it could become a real power that affects the physical world? So it's
Yes,
fascinating.
this short story really explored how escapism could be a superpower.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd want the superpower just because I wouldn't have to ever buy groceries again.
Yeah,
You go back in the past,
right,
you
yeah.
just eat there,
Right.
and then you're like, all right,
I
I'm
could,
fully
I could totally
restored.
get behind escapism being a superpower. No, yeah, yeah, totally. Now that is one superpower I wouldn't mind, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. All right,
Totally.
man. So I think I don't really have anything else to add to the conversation. What about the rest of you?
Yeah, I think
I just
we.
want to ask what everyone would pick as the one superpower that they'd get.
I'm totally
You got me
okay
onto that.
with escapism as a superpower. No, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's very
Hmm.
undefined. So I guess you get groceries for free, and you get a
No,
cool
just
dream.
like retreat into my own dream world and be
Oh,
master of my own dream world.
I do that every Saturday, man. It's called Dungeon Master.
right.
It's
Yeah,
not a
exactly.
superpower.
That's a lie, Nikki. You
What?
are totally
What?
at the mercy of your players screwing up your campaign.
Yeah.
My friend, there's such thing called the rocks fall and everybody dies. Hold on.
Consequences.
I'm gonna
You have to
think
give
of
them consequences. Well, okay. So, Nikki, then what would be the superpower then? If escapism isn't your preferred, what do you pick?
teleportation.
No.
Teleportation.
Okay.
100%. 100%. Because,
Okay.
like, imagine you are because I'm imagining in this world, like, I'm the only person who has teleportation. You could
So at the
instantly take some.
so wait, at the end of the day, you just don't want to go get groceries. You really just don't want to go get
Yeah,
groceries.
yeah. But I'm saying, so you could take this 1,000 different ways. Okay, you could go straight with it, right? Like you could be like, look, the world, I have the superpower to teleport anything anywhere. So you pay me huge money, and I will do that for you. Or you could be like a criminal mastermind. You just teleport into a bank, grab whatever you need, teleport back. I mean, who's gonna do what? It's impossible,
Right.
right? You could go all altruistic about it, right? Like you could travel the world, see the people, maybe save some individuals. I think teleportation gives you the most amount of things that you would be able to do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why
I think Yeah, I mean, I think for me, maybe telepathy, maybe like a big old Professor X,
Oh, you don't want to know
being
what
able
I'm thinking, pal.
oh, yeah, oh God, come to think of it.
You know that scene from X-Men 3, I think, or X-Men 2, where Xavier's like trying to feel the emotion of every human and he just goes crazy.
Yeah, right, yeah, you have to definitely be able to fine tune it. Or, the other if I okay, failing that, yeah, I don't wanna get into some people's minds. Failing that, maybe the ability to see some time into the future, the
Whoa.
precognition. Maybe some
Captain
precognition would help.
Captain
Yeah,
Foresight. Yeah, okay, yeah, I see, I
yeah.
see.
But why
Not
why
Uh,
stop there? Why not physically travel to the future?
Oh God, no thanks. Yeah, I don't know. It might be as long as I can come back.
Anthony also do not want to go get groceries. That's what I'm getting.
yeah,
Like
Yeah,
yeah,
groceries
right,
is a real
exactly.
chore.
I'm gonna
What would
go
happen
buy
if I get
groceries
shot?
for me. Yeah, I have to go buy groceries, mind control people, and like, go get me my groceries.
What about you, Robert? What would be the superpower you would pick?
ooh, perhaps the power to create atlases of this country with the correct county boundaries in them instead of the garbage that we have now.
That's
Anyway,
so random.
Very random.
It just came out of nowhere. Why is that? Why is that on your mind, Robert?
well, just the vandalism of calling Perthshire Central Region instead of Perthshire, that sort of thing. Anyway,
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Very important.
Captain
That's very
Captain
specific.
Pedantic,
I
understood.
can see how that is very important. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. What about you, XJ? What would be the superpower?
Not
I already
escapism.
said I don't mind just like
I mean, I
do
don't.
this. Hype,
Really? Okay.
Okay.
take a mushroom trip and then actually be real
Okay.
and then actually make it real. I don't mind that, seriously.
Uh,
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you would be the one who would very much enjoy mind control, but I think you'd do it in ways which would just be like little minute things, like if somebody like annoys you in some little way, like you're like out somewhere eating dinner and you
Oh
see a
well,
guy using a toothpick.
the things I
Uh,
could do with that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, at some point you would divulge into a supervillain, but it would first begin with like, ah, man, that guy is picking his teeth, and I don't want to see it.
I mean,
And then it would
I have
spiral out of
teen
control.
I have teenagers, so if I could control their minds, so like if I told you to mow the lawn, I'm just gonna command you mow the lawn, like take
Oh,
out
the
the trash.
Lord! Oh man,
Right,
it's those like epic trailers for the superhero movie, and the villain
right,
comes out and he's like, "I'm going to make everyone mow my lawn."
right. Take out my recycling.
Do
Uh, you know.
groceries for me.
Yeah, right. It's all of our powers are grocery related.
I'm on board. I'm
Like,
on board.
Uh,
All right, I
well,
give
well,
this story
never
an 8
podcast
out
on
of
an
10.
empty stomach.
that's
Never
true.
podcast on
That's
an empty
true.
stomach.
Absolutely. And like I totally agree, right? Groceries are just such a chore. Yeah.
Oh God. You guys have the service where you can just pay someone else to shop. The store employees, you pay $5, they shop for you, and
Nah,
we have that
I
here.
actually go down to the store myself. It's like
Okay. Yeah.
I don't mind doing groceries to be quite honest because my life these days I'm just like stuck in front of the screen just because of
I
work and all
think
that.
in UK there's like Tesco delivery service, right?
Yeah,
So there's stuff
oh,
like
So
Okay.
that.
already
yeah. Oh,
every
yeah, we
British
have
has a
things
superpower to
do.
avoid grocery shopping.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's true.
For a small fee.
Mm,
Mm.
yeah. Hey,
Well, anyway, so
small things
what about
matter.
scores then? Have we come
Yeah,
to the
yeah, yeah.
scores? What's
As I said,
oh,
I'd give it an 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10?
I don't
Okay.
mind
What do
giving it
what do
9 out of 10. I don't mind giving it 9 out of 10. It's I
same.
did I enjoyed it the same way I did Doctor Strangelove. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would give it a 9 as well. Absolutely. Yeah. Robert?
Yeah, I'd give it a 10 out of 10 and
All
Whoa,
right.
Love as
Mind
well.
blown.
incredible!
Mind blown.
I'd like to say that Bester has written quite a few stories on the theme of wish fulfillment. It seems to be a sort of preoccupation of his.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
The one of the stories, the chap really wants to go home to his ideal place and time, and it turns out that he's not very knowledgeable, but he's Japanese ancestry, and he ends up in Hiroshima in early 1945.
Oh no!
So that does put that does reveal some interesting things about what could possibly be the point of the story. Then, well, that's a great spot to end the podcast on. I feel, unless anyone has.
I think that this author would write a great episode of the Prisoner. That's all I want to say. I think he would do a really good job.
Interesting. Yeah. All right, man. So, well, thank you all for listening. And if you like the discussion, please like and subscribe and help us out with a little bit of growth on YouTube and all that. And until we see each other again, have a nice day.